each side. Laura Chastain will lead off for the Democrats, and Nick Valiato for the Republicans. Foreign policy, economic policy, domestic policy, and healthcare policy. I'll announce the names of those participants and then there will be, okay, during those things there's going to be a wait a minute. Did they get a 4-minute opening statement as well, the topics people? Okay. They'll each have a 4-minute opening statement and a 3-minute response, a 2-minute rebuttal, and a 1-minute final say. And then they'll each have 2 minutes to close. Closing statement. And then when everything's over, there will be closing remarks by Laura and Nick. And if any pizza left, you can get some. Please stay with me.
Good evening, everybody. Like Professor McNulty said, my name is Laura Scott, and I'm the president of College Democrats here at EDU. I want to thank you all for coming to our 3rd annual debate, and this is also the 3rd time that Professor McNulty has moderated this debate. So please let's hear for Professor McNulty. Now I'd like to introduce the debaters for the Democrats. Going up first, we have Foreign Policy by Adam Edwards, the Economy by Robbie Gray, and Domestic Policy being debated by Andrew Kaufman, and lastly, Healthcare debated by the sensational Sam Sussex.
Cool.
Thank you guys for all coming out. You know, it's really nice to see such a large amount of people, especially because unfortunately we weren't able to do this in the fall semester as we usually do. It's nice to make sure that we do it as we've done every year. So on the Republican side, in terms of domestic policy, we have Venancio Cortese on. Come on. Foreign policy, we have Michael Lombardi. The economy, we have Taylor Arla. And for healthcare, we have me.
Alright, let's begin. Up first is foreign policy.
Alright, Mike, let's put it down.
As you look at the stage, the Democrat is on the right and the Republican is on the left. Go figure. Adam Edwards is representing the Democratic side. Michael Lombardi is representing the Republican side. There was a coin flip, and the Democrats will be leading off this time. Mr. Edwards, the floor is yours for 4 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Edwards. I was raised a block away from the World Trade Center and watched the second tower collapse at the age of 11. Because of some speeches the president made following it, some photo ops, and the fact that he decided to go after the Saudi-controlled al-Qaeda by bombing Afghanistan, he gained astronomical approval ratings, even though he wasn't doing anything to crack down on the global terrorist networks effectively and had no real plans to do so. The Bush administration knew the approval numbers wouldn't last very long, so they decided to use the broad emotions of the American people to their advantage as rapidly as possible. Just like the overblown threat of communist infiltration was used as an excuse to radically expand the military to completely unnecessary levels, so was the threat of evil mastermind terrorists heading forth and plotting to take over the world. 9/11 stirred up so many emotions in people, including myself, that we agreed to a new wave of military expansion and to engage in a counterproductive misadventure in Afghanistan, while those responsible were still on the loose. We were told that to fight terrorism, we must meet it with blind acts of aggression, no matter how unpopular they may seem. This, of course, is not the way to combat terrorist groups. In fact, it is in direct support of terrorist groups. By wreaking havoc in the Middle East, we answered al-Qaeda's prayers. We took our eye off their global network and solidified their standing throughout the Middle East. It was a classic trap which the Bush administration fell for, hook, line, and sinker. So with public support waning in 2002, the Bush administration decided it was time to make clear what their intentions had been all along. to lay claim to Iraq's oil reserves at the urging of special interests. Saddam, the old buddy of the Republican Party, was actually one of al-Qaeda's worst enemies, and thus al-Qaeda had no presence in Iraq. Yet the Bush administration insisted on ignoring all of that. Of course, as we found out later, terrorism exploded exponentially in Iraq, and all their claims were lies. So while we were engaged in these costly, ineffective, and counterproductive efforts, our allies suffered terror attacks on their home soil, and tens of thousands of Americans were killed or maimed, all while al-Qaeda expanded, and those responsible for 9/11 remained at large. Even if they had been armed and admittedly invaded Iraq because we wanted their oil, it still would have been a bad idea. Right now, controlling oil is a lever of world power, but that is rapidly changing. In 20 years, whoever is the least dependent on oil will have a global advantage. Therefore, not only were our invasions in the Middle East terror promoted, but they even failed in a geopolitical sense. So what should we do? First, let the others squabble over oil. We have better things to do, like becoming the global leader in the new energy industry. Second, we should be working with all nuclear and chemical weapon states to reduce stockpiles and secure unstable ones, to work towards a safer planet and make sure they don't fall into the hands of terrorists. Third, we should redeploy our troops in Iraq back home so our military can be ready to meet new challenges and shift our policy of wild aggression to a more steady posture. Fourth, our policy in the Middle East needs to shift more towards settling old grievances, primarily Israel-Palestine, and work with governments there and elsewhere toward bringing terrorists to justice. Fifth, we need to strengthen our ties with the emerging centers of power throughout the world to ensure our edge in the global economy for years to come. I'm speaking, of course, of China and the EU, but also of Brazil and the emerging unified South America, as well as India, our natural ally in Asia. And sixth, we must recommit to respecting international law and adhere to human rights and war crime codes that our laws command us to do. Continuing to operate in a way which violates these laws reduces our credibility and thus our overall effectiveness in global affairs. In short, let us cast off the old misguided ventures supported by trigger-happy radicals and work towards reclaiming our strong moral, political, and economic stance throughout the globe. Thank you.
Mr. Lombardi, the floor is yours. Before you start, I neglected to mention that several of the panelists asked me to give you a warning that your time was almost up. So I first said 30 seconds, that seemed a little long. 15 seconds, I'll knock on the table, and you'll know that your time is up. Mr. Edwards finished in 3 minutes and 58 seconds. So, yeah, see if you can go for 3:59.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Mario Lombardi, and I'm here to provide some commentary on the most pressing issues facing our nation in the field of foreign policy, not an antiquated diatribe about Bush administration data. Our nation is at a crossroads in our history, one which, and our generation, will be responsible for decisions which will reverberate long after our voices are silenced. We are at, perhaps, the most difficult time in our nation. Our country is currently fighting two wars of questionable popularity, one of which has raged for 9 years and the other for 7. And we have yet to find a cohesive strategy to exit these wars. We also greatly need to determine our position and standing in the world and restore America's prestige and position as leader of the free world. First and foremost, our country needs